Is it really that hard to be a real estate developer? Well, I think it's actually pretty simple, and I wish I would have known this one thing, and that it's just as hard to think big as it is to think very small. So if you guys want to, it's always bigger and better in the real estate development world, and I'm going to give you the 3 reasons or the 3 steps of being a real estate developer, and let's jump into that now. Guys, the number one thing when real estate developers, they're always going to start out with themselves, right? Like you're going to think of a project, you're going to find a piece of dirt, you're going to say, okay, it's a multifamily, it's a storage, it's a, office, whatever the piece, parcel, it's going to have zoning tied to it. And of course you can change it to zoning, but that's a whole different podcast. We're going to just literally talk about what a small scale developer, when they're going to start out, what they're going to do. And you're going to do projects anywhere from, could be $250,000 and it could be up to $10 million, in probably a single project. You're going to create some things like developer fees. And usually I base these off hard costs. So say if you had $1 million project, and the construction, the hard construction cost was $1 million and you want to charge 5% fee, you could get, sweat equity of $50,000 if you complete that project. And sometimes the banks will see that as equity, when banks are on harder lending requirements like they are now. Sometimes they don't. So, but you're starting to create some fees for yourself as a developer, saying, oh, I could throw 50 grand in my pocket and get this project done, if you have some ability to raise some money, correct? So you need to be able to raise some money. Now, this could be from friends and family. For $1 million deal, you're probably going to need a few $100,000. Now, hopefully you can collect that with either other business partners or maybe your friends and family. But again, small local, you're not going to get too far out into others' investors' money. You're going to go to people that you know. Because they need to trust you. At this point, you have no track record, right? And that's, as a small developer, that's what we compete with in the world of small development. You've never done this before. You haven't proven that you can do it. So by building up a track record, hopefully you can raise some money from friends and family, and that's usually the first place to start. Obviously, we all need an idea and a parcel, and you need to know how to do some pro forma work. But I'm not going to get into the pro forma world. I'm just talking about the development space as general. If you guys want more education in the real estate development space, I literally post free content to our email, which will be linked below. And here's some of the issues of being a small developer. You end up finding opportunities everywhere, right? Like once you say, okay, hey, I'm a small real estate developer and I'm looking for deals. I want to develop deals. So I don't know if I want to build housing. I don't know if I want to do small storage condos. Maybe I want to build, small apartment buildings. Because at this point, I have no idea. I don't know how much the cost of construction is unless you have experience in construction. Obviously, where I came from and is a good skill set that should be brought into most real estate developers. You need to know how much it costs to build things. And obviously you need the price of the dirt. And then you can see if, hey, does the rent justify the cost here? And maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't. But you end up looking at all these opportunities and you'll get sent because you don't have a buy box at this point. Your buy box is everything at all times. So when you're doing that, you're not really focused on anything, and you can't really get good at anything because you'll price a small storage building there. You got 5 single family homes over here. You have a 8-plex over there, and you're like, I just can't get good at anything, but I'm going to do everything. So you're going to end up having this happen, especially as an entrepreneur, and you're probably doing that because you're a visionary looking at land deals. But it's very hard to scale that because you have no commonalities, right? Like you're just finding all opportunities and trying to put a project onto it to hopefully get a fee and have some equity position within the project. You're very reliant on what the economy does. So in 21, anyone could be a real estate developer. Anyone could have been an investor. Anyone could have made money at any point in 21 and early 22. The problem is here's 23 and 24. Nothing makes sense. Pencils are down. Lending requirements are tightening. And you know what? The economy's tightening, right? Like that's just what's happening. The debt market tightens. The banks don't want to write loans anymore, meaning you need more money to do these projects. High rates make your performa not work anymore. So it looks very risky, especially if you're brand new to the world of development and you have no track record. How does anyone trust you other than a great uncle or a hopefully very good parents to you that lent you the 300 grand? So anyway, that's a small scale developer. And them are some of the things you're going to battle. You're not going to have a team. You're going to have to wear many hats. So some of the cons that we listed out. So, and then you're getting into like the medium-sized developer. And I like to place myself in this category. Because I learned a lot as a small developer to learn to like hone in on what am I good at and what do I really like developing? What do I know more than anyone else? So you start to establish some focus, right, in something, and anything you focus on, you will get better in. And I would say that as a medium-sized developer, you're doing $5 million to $20 million deals, and these will still be single deals. It's not like multiple deals, multiple areas, just one single development. You're starting to develop though an overhead. Now you can't source all the deals that you're going to do. You can't just yourself do everything. So you're starting to develop a team, meaning maybe you have someone in underwriting. Maybe you have another developer who's finding projects. Might have someone drafting or drawing these projects, putting them together. And you might have some VAs or someone putting together pitch decks, something like that. So you're starting to develop overhead, which means you have bills coming in, even if you don't get developments done. So you start to establish some pressure to get projects done, but not necessarily enough overhead where you're forcing projects to go. And that's where you don't want to get to as a developer. But you gotta collect some of these developer fees. So say, for instance, you were able to charge, instead of that $1 million deal where you charge 5%, and you collected $50,000, you may be doing a $5 million deal. And now maybe you're collecting $250,000. Well, you probably have to collect some of that fee. You can't use it all as sweat equity into the project to get it to go. You probably have to pay for your team, some payroll, if you have a small office, whatever you have. So you might have to collect 50% of that. So $125,000 would go, to you if you get the project, all the way through and funded and complete. And you might throw on $125,000 as equity. So, that's where a lot of developers, it's like, how do you ever get paid? Because you're always working for sweat, right? Like you're trying to gain equity in all of these deals. And so, now you must have some ability though. These projects are smaller or larger in scale, meaning 5 to 20 million. We need to come up with 30 to 40% equity in some of these deals, which could be, all the way from 2 million on a small project to maybe 8 million on a $20 million project you need to come up with. So you need to have the ability to raise some money now. You can't just hope that your dad's gonna, I should call it friends and family, is gonna come save you in this case, right? So now you have to be able to source funds. Maybe it's friends and family. Maybe it's through syndication. That's what I do through Mac Capital. And maybe you do it, you just put together some partners and you just have 5 to 10 members in this partnership. Some guys are capital guys and some guys are doing the construction. One guy's doing the development, which would be in this case, the developer. Maybe you have the property manager. Maybe you have, someone else related to whatever you're building. You raise equity through their sources. So, you kind of get together with a group and you put a project together. That also helps, when you're a medium-sized developer, because you're going to have multiple people signing the note. And as a syndicator, it's actually a little bit harder because it may be just you, the developer, signing the note, and then your LP investors don't have to sign anything, because at the end of the day, no one wants to sign on as collateral if they don't have to, right? So, but you still are liable, like in some of the cons here, that you have to have ability to raise money. So I raise awareness through content building. You have to also attract investors. So you have to be out there networking with investors. It's a very intensive way, because the way the economy is now, of course, it's hard to raise money. People are earning 5% plus at the bank. They're like, this is risk-free. This makes the most sense. That project maybe doesn't have, as much juice as it did when rates were 3%. So it gets very challenging. Everything is 5 times as hard in a down economy to get one deal done. So you still need to be very efficient as this medium size. Otherwise, you will die fast. Because if you're not watching every cent and where it goes, you will not survive. And again, raising the ability to raise money doesn't mean you just, have where you just do a 506c dealing, meaning you just post it on social media and hope everyone comes to you. That's just not how it works anymore. There's too many bad syndicators that made a bad name out there. So people aren't doing that. They want a relationship. A lot of our times why we do 506b deals is because we want to establish a relationship with our investors. We don't want them just to be able to just freaking fly into our deal. We want the relationships. We want to be a long-term investor. This isn't a short play for you anymore, because now if you're a medium-sized developer, you have some overhead, you're probably going to be in this game for a while. Me only being 35 years old, I'm going to be doing this. Well, I think once you start to be a real estate developer, you kind of always are. So when you go down this path, this is the way this is going to happen for you. But you can very quickly get to a medium-sized developer in less than 5 years if you put your heart to it. So, but then you have more pressure to do more projects, right? Because now with this overhead, you definitely have to get some projects done each year, no matter if it's an up or down economy. So you want to do maybe a product type that's resilient to recessions. We do storage because it does very well in down economies and it does very well in up economies. They're not as big a scale as some of the big multifamily projects, but in generalities, we can do a project from 5 to 20 million, and it makes a lot of sense for us. And that's why our investors like to invest beside us in those. But the third, then you got these large developers, right? Like guys have been around for 30 years. There's a lot of differences between a 35-year-old developer and a 65-year-old developer, is that they've probably created a lot more equity for themselves based over time, right? And you're talking, these guys are doing 10 million to 75 million. You got that means you're institutional quality. These have to be top of the line in top markets. You can't be building in small rural communities. It just doesn't work. And, you're going to end up getting this large team. It'll have lots of overhead. But hopefully at this point in time, you're really focused on what you are doing. Is it multifamily? Is it high-rise construction? Is it storage? We do luxury storage. Like we're not doing any multi-story storage complexes. We're doing only luxury storage, single level. That means we got to be in secondary markets. We know where we need to be. But at this point in time, when you're a large developer, that means you're scaling. You have multiple projects in multiple states. You have lots of different developers working for you. If you're going to be doing $75 million or $100 million plus a year, you're probably going to have 3 to 5 projects going. That means you need multiple developers in multiple markets. And you're going to start developing this large overhead. This machine is going to be running. And guys, so with all of that, you're going to have a small chance, you're going to be forced to sell I should say this. Once you go to the institutional level and start taking institutional money, I've met lots of different high-level family offices, REITs, life insurance companies, all the big private equities that will buy these institutional quality, meaning the assets that probably are over 50 million or over that these large developers build. The large institutions call the shots, meaning the money guys, not necessarily the developers are the money guys. It's the large institutions, the private equities with all the money. They determine when you sell, what you collect as a fee, when you collect the fee. Like they call all the shots. Like you can obviously, as a developer, have pushback, and I've dealt with this some. So I have the knowledge of saying this, but you end up getting, pinched as a developer, meaning you have to develop a project to sustain your overhead. But then you get pinched by the money because they want to call all the shots, meaning you can only collect so much fees. And anyway, you'll end up taking very thin deals just to hopefully keep the machine rolling. And now your whole sense of why you became a developer is to gain equity in all your projects turns more like into a transactional base where you're just trying to get the next project done just to hopefully get everything done. And if you're listening to this and you're a commercial broker or a realtor or something like that, you always know what that feeling is. You get a deal done and you're on to the next deal, right? Or maybe you have 10 deals going, right? It's very like that. You always have to have this backlog of deals going forward. And then, you kind of as the contractor, if you're doing that, or the developer, maybe you're the property manager, because oftentimes you'll be the contractor, developer, and property manager all in one. The institutional qualities go right after you to making sure, putting pressure on you for construction timelines and budgets. And they will also put pressure on you to stabilize this asset. And by the time you're done stabilizing that asset, it's usually year 4 or 5 and they're ready to exit, right? So, and then you don't get to hold any equity. You just have to literally rinse and repeat and go to the next one, which, turns to be, it just gets challenging at that level, right? Like that ends up being not where you want to be in life. You want to obviously be a developer that gains equity and has a very good track record on building their investors. Now, I should say that's not all big deals, right? Like that's if you're using institutional money, but you will have to use some institutional money because you will not be able to raise money unless you're Grant Cardone or some of these big, Ken McElroy and, these big money influencers that can raise money $50,000 to $100,000 a whack and be able to call the shots for themselves. That takes a long time to do though. You have to have, 20 plus years of experience before you're going to get to that level. And, then you will be able to hold equity in all of your deals. But, at the highest level, it's also the hardest place to fail because you can do things like non-recourse loans. Even if you do have recourse loans, these loans are so big that they will do such damage to the banks that the banks will end up working. The banks at the end of the day never want to own these assets. They want to lend on them. They do want anything to do with them but lend on them. They don't want to take them back because then it gets a nick on their track record. Where, maybe their lending capacities gets hurt for a little while. So they will work with you to try to get this thing, whether you were P&I moving to interest only or whatever the case is, adjusting so you can float this thing. And then at some point, if, you bought it for way overbuilt for the wrong price and you can't stabilize, obviously you could lose your equity and it would be a terrible deal. But at this level, you're never too big to fail, but like it's harder to fail on these projects because there's also multiple sources debt out there. There's different ways you can do it. And like I said before, to do things as a developer, to think big is just as it's just as easy to think small, to be honest. If you get all these small deals, you end up getting a lot of transactions and you're connecting a lot of dots. And at the end of the day, if you just want to be a small developer and do one-off deals here, there, wherever, you can do that. It's going to be hard to scale that. You're not going to grow a business doing it. You'll just be a guy that does real estate and put together a deal. You want to take it to the next level. That's probably the hardest tier. Because now you're getting real people. You have to manage things. You have to manage cash flow that's very lumpy in a commercial real estate world. And you have to be very flexible because you may not get paid for 2 years. You just might not, because that's just the way the real estate market works. Unless you're getting all these deals done in a high interest environment, which I know there's not that many developments rolling. But people will always continue to develop. This country is very undeveloped. We're 3.2 million housing units short in this country right now. The amount of storage that is needed in all these up and coming areas is monumental. This entire country is literally underbuilt. Again, I've talked about multiple other videos. Check out my other ones. I've talked about regulation and construction, driving up costs. Now you got regulation on banks. You got regulation on, in civil engineering with ponds and all these different scenarios. You got impact fees. everything is driving costs up, and nothing is really going to get relieved on that. Prices aren't going to come down, unfortunately. You know what? I think actually with the amount of dry powder on the sidelines, things only will continue to go up from here. You may see some fire sales here and there, but there is way too much dry powder going out there for anything to be a significant deal. So anyway, guys, there's what it is. I think it's honestly just think bigger in real estate development. It honestly, your pieces of the puzzle will come together faster for you. I wouldn't live in the small tier development space too much. It's just if you're going to have a family and have like a personal life, there's too many deals out there that you will lose your mind, honestly, after a while. Make it to the medium tier. I've had a lot of fun within this space. Again, hopefully make it to the bigger tier at some point, but I do know some of the things that I'm giving up if I do that. So appreciate it. I hope you guys got some info by this. Reach out to me if you have any other questions. Leave a comment below what's one of the biggest challenges you have as a real estate developer, or if you're thinking about being a real estate developer.